Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm particularly enthusiastic because you know when you get the after lunch slot, everybody's warm and they're sleepy, but then they put together a panel of people who can wake up any crowd. So I'm really, thank you, Linda. Clap, give them some applause. These are people that are really, truly on the front line. And I mean, like, a couple of you have had pictures in handcuffs recently, if I remember correctly. So really, truly on the front line. Yeah, so let me work my way down the line. I'll just do quick introductions of everyone. Next to me is Asma Elhuni. She is an organizer with Race Forward and many other things. But if you look for her online, she is literally getting herself arrested to defend our immigrant brothers and sisters. So important work that she's doing, and she's going to contribute, some of the lessons learned from that for the conversation. Next to her is my colleague Zahra Billoo. Zahra is the executive director of the CAIR San Francisco office. And in terms of advocacy, she's a bit of a different angle. She's a great activist. How many staff did your office start with? 2, and is how many now? She started with 2 staff, 31 now, and you own your own building, right? So, I mean, you want to do real advocacy? That matters, right? Next to her is Miko Peled. Miko is an Israeli-American human rights activist. Among a number of other things, has also authored 2 books, at least, one of them on the Holy Land 5. And then finally next to him, Medea Benjamin. If you need an introduction to Code Pink, go next door to the government affairs room, because they got stuff to tell you about. But Medea, we're very fortunate to have her on stage with us as well. So, I'm just going to start off. We're going to go for about 30 minutes with discussion among ourselves. And I know that Asma has 1 or 2 slides she wants to show you. And then we're going to open it up to conversation with everybody. But I'd like to start with this if I could. And this is to the group. I know you all will be polite with each other, but you're also activists, seize the mic. So feel free to speak up. Last night during my presentation, I offered one thing that anybody working with me will hear when I'm talking about advocacy. And my common line, my common principle is no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. Meaning my advocacy will always have to adapt, no matter what my plan is. So, for each of you in your advocacy, what are those lines that your staff around you will hear, because they're the lines that sort of form a core to your philosophy of how to be a successful activist?
Hello, can you hear me? First of all, to be in the presence of these people, I thought, why me with these people? But this is really good, because then you get to see a very ordinary person, a nobody, who can do stuff, right? So it's good. No. So I think the saying that I would go to, and I always go to, is if you fail to plan, you're actually planning to fail. Because organizing is it's not just like going out one day. It is about planning. And if we don't have a real plan about what we want, and I'll talk a little bit later about a framework that you all can take home with you. So that's something really important to me, and to help people understand, because as a lead organizer with Race Forward, one of the things I do is help people on the grassroots level organize in their communities. So I think that's the saying. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail.
How's this? Yes, okay. Thank you all so much for being here and for being awake after lunch, which was really good, even though I didn't have the dessert. And thank you, Corey, for that generous introduction. Asma, you are anything but ordinary. And I'm so honored to be on stage with Miko and Medea. I ask my team often to meet the community where they are. And it may sound strange coming from someone who's built a lot of infrastructure, but the work that we have to do can't happen at a desk and doesn't happen for very long behind a computer. One of the things that I find we get caught up in is how do I want to communicate? How do I want to plan? How do I want people to show up? And that doesn't work. We have to go to people where they are and communicate in ways that they will hear and receive us. We have to listen to them. And that is where real change happens. I tell this story to my team all the time about this one event 15 years ago where our partners and leadership said, let's organize a Know Your Rights workshop at the masjid on a Saturday afternoon after Dhuhr in Ramadan. There were a lot of resources that went into that little Know Your Rights workshop, and even fewer people who came, because nobody is at the masjid after Dhuhr on a Saturday in Ramadan. They are doing what some of us wish we were doing right now, taking a nap. And we changed that model, and we said, okay, well, we gotta go to people at Jummah prayer. We have to go to them after Maghrib. We have to go to them at halal restaurants. That is where we will build power and an engagement. They lead us. We follow and we serve.
So, nice to be here. Good to see so many people, so many friendly faces, and great to be here on this panel. Thank you for inviting me. So, I just want to add one last line to my bio, which is that I'm founder and now director of the Palestine House of Freedom here in Washington, D.C. And thank you. It's right on Capitol Hill. If you have time, go check it out. And the topic of this panel had to do with vision, vision and to victory. So the vision, it's just a small example, but the vision that we had was to have a high-profile, really in-your-face place for Palestine in Washington, D.C., with a flag, you know, displayed proudly, and the name Palestine and so forth. And we ended up being right on Capitol Hill, 2 blocks away, or a few blocks away from the Capitol. The Palestinian flag is flying proudly. The name Palestine House of Freedom is there. So we had the vision, and in a small way, we were victorious because now we have that space. What I felt, and you know, all my Palestinian colleagues and comrades, was that of course, the vision has to be very, very clear. Like we heard, you have to plan. But that beyond just having a clear vision, it's got to be pushing the envelope. So I can't tell you how many people said, you know, you can't do it, you're not going to find a place, you're not going to have an organization. If you put the flag up, they're going to take it down, and on and on and on. It's been over a year, and, you know, alhamdulillah, everything's fine. Yeah, and so when it comes to the larger vision, we wanted to make sure that our larger vision as an organization, as Palestine House of Freedom, is also like that. It pushes the envelope. It's a little bit in people's, not a little bit, it is in the other side's face. And that is, so our mission as a nonprofit is education, but the objective of the education is to make it clear that a liberated Palestine, a free democratic Palestine from the river to the sea is the way we get to peace and justice and stability and on and on and on and on. In other words, people need to understand that that is the good thing. That is the vision that everybody should support. And I'll just say this, the current situation that we've seen over the last 100 years or so, the Zionist occupation of Palestine, is just one dark chapter in the long history of Palestine. And we want to bring that chapter to an end so that Palestine can once again thrive.
I forget the question.
Happens to me all the time, too. We're looking for, over the years, you've likely developed a few principles that go into any advocacy campaign that you run, because it's like your philosophy of advocacy. So what are those key points that you think people here in this room need to learn?
Well, I think a key point is to celebrate the small victories. Because, you know, sometimes it's your own family that's the most brutally honest to you, and my kids have said to me, Mom, you spent your entire life fighting for things that you will never win. And they meant like shifting the military budget to things like healthcare and education, you know, little things like that. And And so I have felt over the years how important it is to get those little victories. And some of them maybe we'll talk about in more detail when we look at campaigns. But for example, around the Palestine issue, we've had a campaign to focus on individual companies like Ahava that had the, quote, beauty products that were made on stolen land. And we managed to force them to close down their factory in the settlements. We worked on the soda stream and same kind of thing. And also, you know, sully the name of these corporations in the process. And then I think something that's been very near and dear to me has been campaigns to focus on individual political prisoners. Whether they are, I mean, it's much harder when they're in Palestine, but we've worked on campaigns of political prisoners all over the world. And when we achieve a victory and somebody is liberated, that's a victory for all of us. So I'd say make sure we celebrate the small wins that are not so small in the lives of the individuals affected.
Thank you all very much. And I want to start off with that idea of campaigns. So that is something that all of us are constantly thinking about. Every news cycle, there are 5 more campaigns I could launch. What do each of you consider before you decide this is the right campaign for my organization? Why don't we start down at the other end and work our way back this time?
Yeah, a major campaign for us, those of us in Code Pink who are working on Congress, because there's many people in Code Pink that just refuse to work on Congress. They just do not. In fact, when we put out alerts to our membership to take action, the ones focused on Congress are the ones that do the worst. You know, when you're focused on a company, people feel a little bit more that they have, that it's possible to win. But a big campaign for us right now in DC is the Block the Bombs, because it's a specific piece of legislation, because it's what we call evergreen, that it's going to be open for a long time, and because we can go one by one to work with people like you who were in the district and people like us in DC to coordinate our strategy to get one more member of Congress to sign on and then one more member of Congress sign on. So that's the focus that some of us have right now. And I just want to say, because I think that blocking the weapons to Israel is the #1 thing we must do.
So at Dara Hurriya, at Palestine House of Freedom, we chose to take a more strategic, long-term kind of campaign, being that we're as a nonprofit, we're an educational organization. And the key thing, like I said earlier, to demonstrate to people that a free Palestine from the river to the sea is the reality that will benefit everyone involved, all parties involved, everybody who lives between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean. So we embarked on a campaign that we're calling Tarakum. Tarakum in Arabic is accumulation. And there is an infinite amount of material just from the Palestinian experience itself. Culture, political education, writing, I mean, countless stuff. It's like a treasure box that is not tapped. So what we're doing now, we're actually working on a curriculum at the end of which we're going to have a course, which will be, you know, it could be virtual, it could be in person, people will be able to choose, but a course that will allow people to have a deeper understanding of the issues so that they can talk, so that they can broaden the circle, so they don't have to be intimidated, bringing up Palestine with their Jewish neighbor that they've had for 30 years or their best friend or whatever the case may be, and gradually grow this movement for a free Palestine. So again, it's a little bit longer term, but we feel strongly that while all the campaigns are important and all the campaigns need to be, there, we want to take a longer approach, or more strategic, long-term approach, because at the end of the day, that's really what we need to do. We need to broaden the circle so that eventually we can win.
I made a list because I've been thinking about this a lot. So I will see 5 news stories a day, and then I'll see 5 more on Instagram and another 5 on X. And then there's all the calls, right? For those of us that do this work, there's also this like inflow of people who are like, can you do this thing? Can you do that thing? So the first question is it in my scope? Like, is it part of my mandate, either organizationally or whatever purpose I've chosen for myself? And that includes an honest assessment of, am I the most qualified person to drive this, right? Or am I connected to those people? How many times have we seen somebody start something and you're like, that's not the right person, or that's not the right organization? And I remember a consultant told me like a decade ago, he said, every time you say yes to something, it's going to come at the expense of something else. And being in these roles, being in leadership, or even in activism in the community, however that may look for you, like, requires making hard choices. And sometimes that means saying no. The second question I ask is, whether or not we will win, will we build power? So earlier when I was moderating the panel, I referenced this legislation we've been fighting in California, Assembly Bill 715. Every major pro-Israel organization has come together in California to try to censor ethnic studies. And the legislature is giving them everything they want. So we decided 6 months ago, when the legislation was first introduced, we are going to fight this every step of the way. Because when pro-Israel groups want to censor ethnic studies, we know what that means. They want to erase every mention of Palestine in public school classrooms under the guise of protecting students from anti-Semitism, when we know that that's not the full story. And candidly, I didn't know that we could stop the bill. We've mobilized all of the resources, we've got a great coalition, and I'll talk about that. But the first time it was voted on in the assembly, it moved unanimously. And we kept fighting, and we kept fighting. And what I've said to my team in other instances is, if you move the bill and you win, but you didn't build power, then that bill's gonna get taken from you. So in this same way, it's not always about winning and losing, it's about who am I engaging in the process and how broad is the coalition. So the coalition fighting this bill is over 100 organizations. And it includes every major educational organization in the state, the California Faculty Association, the California Teachers Association, right? Thousands of people have signed letters to their elected officials. Hundreds have come with CAIR to the state capitol. And so win or lose, the question is, are we building power? And the second time it got voted on, we still didn't get any no's, but we got more abstentions. We got apologies from the people who voted for it. Like, we know Palestinians are suffering, but we have to do this. That incremental move was a reflection of the power that we had built and mobilized and engaged. And today, there are thousands of people in California, including op-ed writers and elected officials, who are watching this bill in a way that they wouldn't have had we not said, win or lose, we're gonna use this to build our community. Third, resources. Do I have the money and people to do it? Right? And then that feeds right into coalition, because if I don't have the money and people, can I find them? Right? We say this a lot, Linda said it earlier, justice cannot be for just us. How am I in relationship with other people? Some of the loudest and most powerful voices against this bill in California are the educators. Because not only is it going to impact ethnic studies, it's now going to make it easier to target teachers who get it wrong, or wrong according to the Zionists, right? So working with the California Teachers Association when we hadn't really before, and getting them to come out and say, we are unanimously opposing this bill. None of us wins alone. And we need to remember that as we go into this, is do I have the money and resources, but am I also building the relationships? And then the last thing, I talked earlier about 7 generations. Win or lose on this bill, what is the experience for our children and their children and their children, right? Going forward. Because whatever we concede right now, we have to be fully aware we don't get back in 2026 or 2028. And so the last question in the assessment for me is, what is the long-term impact of what we are doing? I am not here to fight for my right to wear a hijab, or my right to protest, or my right to wear. I'm here for 7 generations ahead. The stone that you cast today, the seed that you plant today, makes that impact. And if you let the other side do it, they will. And in fact, they already are. And so we can't take on everything, but when we do, let's be intentional, let's be broad-based, and let's make sure that we're building our community's power.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think the most important part of a campaign is related to something I want to show you on the framework. So is this a good time where I could just put up the framework? So yeah, if you could put the PowerPoint slide up real fast, and to your right and left, you'll be able to see, if you can get the slide where it says campaign blueprint, or it says plan. I think it says plan. Okay, so just really fast, when we organized, we talked about the need to create a plan. It's like a roadmap. And if you don't have a plan, then you're aiming for what? Nothing. You don't know where you're aiming. You're just randomly going out. And I think I talked to some college students and I said, please come to this session because I really want to give you some tools where you can walk away from this room and say, you know what, there's a framework that has been created. So there's many different kinds of framework. I'm going to share the most popular in the United States. Right? I was first trained under USAS, United Students Against Sweatshops. Even they are using this plan. It's called the Midwest Academy Chart. Anyone can get this online. If you just search Midwest Academy Chart, you'll pull this up, okay? And so what we want to do is we have goals. But the problem is sometimes our goals are way too big that we're just not going to be able to win it. And so what we want to do is look at this big goal. All right, the goal is free Palestine, you know, the liberation of Palestine. This is just an example. There are many things our communities need, right? So you're not going to get that tomorrow, but what does that look like for you today? What is a small part of this that we can win, okay? So for some students, for example, in New Jersey, Rutgers, that looked like being able to bring Palestinian students from Gaza to the United States as a win, and they won that, right? So that could be the demand. So under goals, you want the goal to be winnable. What is the demand, right? Another part of, okay, so I think when you asked me what is the most important part, I believe that is the most important part. And that is where people, they have too big of a goal that's not winnable, and then you just don't win. So you want something that is achievable, that can be measured, right? And you can actually win that, right? And you're not abandoning the bigger goal. It's just a part of the goal. What happens after that, you're building on that. And then inshallah, one day we will see a free Palestine, inshallah. And then the second thing you want to do is who can give you what you need, what the demand is. So you want to figure out who those are. They're often called targets. Some people call them enemies. I don't like to use the word enemy because maybe they're our friends and they're just not, they're not educated enough about an issue. So we just call them targets in organizer language. And what you want to do is a power analysis. That's a fancy word for just do some research on this person. What motivates this person? Are they a part of any clubs, right? Who's a part of their family? Maybe they have a child with a disability, and that can help you because you know a certain group that works around disability justice that can influence that. So you want to do a power analysis, all right, on the decision maker. All right, the next one is tactics or timeline. Basically, those are the things you're going to do to apply pressure on your target to give you what you need. Because I'm going to tell you right now, being right is not enough. People who have done this work can tell you it's not enough to be right. We have to actually put enough pressure where everywhere this person turns, your target, they see you or they see your group. And then finally they'll give you what you, and I'm telling you, we're doing this all the time. We just won something in Princeton, the Immigration Trust Act resolution. They said no to us. They literally said, no, we're not going to pass this. And we're like, oh, that's not an option for us. We're going to protect the immigrant community. So we showed up at every city council meeting. We did the power analysis. We did the power mapping. And we won despite them. The mayor didn't even show up when we won. I did the zagharit, right? I did everything. But all that to say is you got to apply enough pressure. And how do you do that? Through tactics. And we'll talk about tactics in a second. The next thing is operational considerations, right? How often do you meet? You got to meet. You got to meet to figure out who's doing what, right? What's the plan? What are the tactics, right? Also, going back to tactics really fast, you're not going to win overnight. You heard many people say today and yesterday, organizing is a long-term, like it's not something you're going to win tomorrow. You got to be in it. To win it, you gotta be in it and you gotta know it takes time. So oftentimes what I do with my organizers is just say, all right, so we need to figure out what are we gonna do this month? What are we gonna do this month? What are we gonna do this month, right? So maybe the first month it's, all right, we're gonna write op-eds. We're gonna do teach-ins. We're gonna have a table at this event. This is what's gonna happen for the month of August. In September, we're gonna do this. All this is to apply pressure on the target because they need pressure. Continuous pressure until they're gonna give us what we want, right? Okay, so we said tactics are the things we're gonna do to apply pressure to get what we want, right? Organizational considerations is what are we doing to, like we just said, the roles, et cetera, but also what are we doing to bring people into our movement? They have money power. We have what? People power. Literally, that is our power. And if we're not doing the work of bringing more people into our movement, then we're not going to win. I promise you, we can't do it alone as Muslims. The black community can't do it alone as black people. The immigrant community can't do it alone. The Latino community can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. We need each other. So that means we have to do a lot of what they call one-to-ones, which are meetings, meeting people where they are and bringing them in. You heard yesterday about who do we talk to. I'm going to tell you right now. If you are a real organizer and you did this long enough, and I know people in this room are real organizers, you have to have a theory of change that makes sense to you. There's only 24 hours in a day. And if you're spending most of your time with those who are most likely not going to be able to get convinced, you are wasting your time. The majority of Americans are not where we are, maybe where they call us the far left sometimes, right? The majority of Americans are in the middle, and the middle is not just Democrats, it's Democrats and Republicans, right? You want to get those people. They're the majority of the U.S. They're the ones who can say, yes, free Palestine, but they can also say, oh, but anti-Semitism. You want to get those people and do that work. And then the next one is constituents and allies. You want to do a power mapping. Who should be joining us? We should be working together with, et cetera. And then you want to do internal skill set sharing. So basically, when people come into our movement, when they're coming into our meetings, everybody has skills. You don't have to be in the front line. I'm gonna do this real fast. Look, sometimes you're not great at public speaking. I honestly do not like public speaking, all right? But maybe you're good at writing. So maybe you're the ones who write the op-eds. Maybe you don't like writing and you don't like speaking, but you're great at drawing, where you're gonna create the zines that are gonna educate people, right? Maybe you can't do any of that stuff, but you know what? You give great massages, and after an action, you're gonna dedicate your time to give massages to those who've just gotten arrested. All that to say is there's so many things you can do. These are just an example of some tactics. There's many to apply pressure to the target. Figure out what you wanna do, and this is just a few. You can get super creative, and I know college students, you have been creative. You've been teaching us the way. So this is just some examples, right? Okay, so maybe I'll, so I just wanted to share that, and then hopefully I can talk later.
No, your mic. I'm not taking that from you. That's dangerous. All right. So Zahra spoke about meeting the community where they're at. We've got about 30 minutes, and we would like to meet where you're at. So I'm going to start walking a mic around, unless we have somebody who can do that for us. I saw your hand. Way to be a good activist and raise your hand first. I'll walk a mic around. You have incredible experts here. This is your chance to learn, and please, your questions teach me as well. So it's very helpful to us. You gonna help me out, Juan Pablo? Lady right there.
Assalamu alaikum. So my question is for Mr. Miko. Am I saying this right? Am I saying that right? Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, wait, I wrote this down, 1 second. Okay, so firstly, I just met you right before your panel, and I was telling you that I'm a big fan of your work, at least what I know of it so far. I still have to read your book, but it's on my list. So you were introduced as an Israeli citizen. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, because I think for many of those in the Muslim American community, we often only know about the unethical establishment of Israel. And so sometimes it's kind of easy for us to extrapolate that to the character of everyone who holds Israeli citizenship. And oftentimes, we don't think about our own status as, I mean, this is CAIR, that like American is literally in the acronym, and we don't often think about how we are all on occupied land as well. And so sometimes that lack of drawing the parallel sometimes can blind us to things that we should be aware of. So I have two questions for you. One of them is, like, what is the sort of, what is it like within Israel to advocate for Palestinian liberation or human rights? What does that actually look like? And then the second part of the question is, how do you navigate the tensions of your dual identity as someone who cares very deeply about human rights and about Palestinians and Muslims, and also holds that citizenship? So I ask this because I hope we can all learn from you. Yeah, okay.
First of all, how far on the list is my book? Where exactly on the list is
it just came to the top with that question.
As long as it's on the top, that's fine. Yeah, you know what? It's a really good question, and it's something that I get asked quite often, and that I think about a lot. So, for me, there's only one reason not to tear up my Israeli passport, and that's because it's my ticket to get in. It's the only way I can go in and do my work. That being said, advocacy for Palestine since October 7 really doesn't exist. I mean, there are a few individuals, but Israeli society has, I think October 7th has ripped the mask off of this so-called idea of an Israeli peace movement or an Israeli whatever, liberal Zionism, all that nonsense. October 7th ripped that off completely. So it's extremely dangerous now to talk about Palestine over there within that society. So it doesn't happen. In terms of, so to me, if you ask me where I'm from, I say I'm from Palestine. And then I get people that don't know me give me kind of a funny look and they go, really? What's your name again? Because clearly my name is not an Arab name. And so, but then, you know, we start the conversation. But I think it's important, the way I view it is, Palestine is the country. Israel is a regime that has taken over and needs to be brought to an end. But my loyalty, my sense of duty is to Palestine and to my Palestinian sisters and brothers who are fighting the fight, as we all know, every single day and paying a very, very heavy price. So that's how I deal with that. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how I view it. That's how I see it. And again, within Israeli society, I mean, it's always been a racist society. I mean, the state was established on the ashes of Palestinians, on the graves and the ashes of Palestinians. We know that. So from the get-go, there wasn't any chance that there was going to be good. But of course, now we have an 80-year history, so I don't think there's any question about that. So yeah, that's my take.
Next question's here.
I thought you had a good suggestion when you said in the tactics we need to bring more people into the movement. So I'm with American Muslims for Palestine in Cleveland. We're trying to get more Muslims into the group. And you know, I don't think people are apathetic. I think they very, very much sympathize, but we have a problem with a lot of them being immigrants, fearful of joining anything, fearful of voting even. So like, do you have any tactics or strategies you can share?
I want to offer something that's not tactical, but how I've counseled myself on this, and then I'd love to hear tactics too, but I feel like that's a you question. I will often think back to our prophets, peace be upon them, who were the best of people, far better than all of us combined. And they would give everything, including their lives and families, to this work. And they would teach for decades to emerge with a handful of followers. And so whenever I feel like, why didn't more people show up? Why wasn't this action bigger? How come they're not moving? I think if it took the best of creation, right, and there are so many stories, unsolicited parenting advice, we in my house did not grow up with Disney bedtime stories. We grew up with stories of the prophets, peace be upon them. My mom would be like, yeah, we're going to open up this Ghulam Sarwar book and we're going to read about this prophet tonight. Some of you may know that book. So I go back to that. And I say that to say that there are the tactics and we have to push and we have to keep pushing. But sometimes we push and it's going to take a really long time. A small thing we've been celebrating at my CAIR office is for the second year in a row, our gala sold out 1 whole month in advance. And people are like, how did you do it? And it's like, well, this is also my 16th gala. And up until 14, I was selling tickets the night before. And so it's something that like I counsel myself on. And so having that helps me then move through the tactics. And that enables me to put my faith in Allah and say that as much as I do, He's the one that turns hearts and minds.
Yes. Also, sister, I'm with American Muslims for Palestine, New Jersey, and also CAIR, so this is all volunteer, apart from working, and also with Resistencia, with an immigrant rights group locally. And so that's a really good question. So I know what we do is we do approach masajid, and we tell them, hey, can we come in on Friday or whatever and talk to the congregation, because sometimes they don't have the language, and they'll allow us space to come in. And then guess what? The imams are not the only leaders in masajid. For real. There's organic leaders in our masajid, and oftentimes they're the women cooking in the back kitchen, right? Or getting together with their friends afterwards, etc. You want to find those organic leaders, tap into them. They go to the masjid. Masjid could still be the place to recruit, right? But it doesn't have to be in front of everyone, right? If they say no, that's your masjid. It's not the imams. Right? So you can go to the masjid and try to recruit people from there, but I think people need to know that it's safe. And for us in New Jersey, what we've done is we have a coalition mostly led by CAIR and AMP, where we're with American Jewish Voice for Peace, and it's this coalition of many people. And I think that makes people feel a little safer. And so that when we put out the call, all right, because in our legislature, they're trying to pass IRA, which is a bill that criminalizes calling Israel racist or whatever, right? They're trying to make it anti-Semitic to criticize Israel. And we're gonna kill this, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, right? Because we have so many people, we have a coalition, it's not just like, so yeah, all that to say is don't rely on like the labeled leaders as the only place, as if they own that. No, there's people everywhere. You meet Muslims everywhere, and you don't want just Muslims, because remember what we said, we can't win alone, and I promise you, we wouldn't kill IRA if it was just us, I promise you, right? We wouldn't get any of our rights if it was just us, so you want to tap into everyone, and you want to be there for everyone too. So it's not just about IRA. The reason why I do immigration work, they tapped on me, they knew me, they said, hey, we know you're an organizer, can you come in? And I proved, I'm going to put my body on the line for this community, right? And they show up. Every time they speak, the immigrant rights groups, they wear a keffaya, the group that so like if we're there for them, I promise they'll be there for us too. That's collective liberation.
Thank you. Hi. Ann Wilcox. I'm affiliated with the National Lawyers Guild. This is mostly for Medea, but mostly also the young lady from Midwest Academy, which I've been to. Can you address the issue of risk in your activities, like taking, protesting, bird dogging congressmen, which could get you arrested, or, the level of a risk in large protests, and even going over to the region, like the Samud flotilla, that's obviously going to be put in jail when they arrive. So if you'd address the risks you take.
Well, I heard somebody say this morning, and I don't remember who it is, but maybe it was Hazami said something like, we all have privilege. And that made me really think, because I think the fact that we're alive is a big privilege we have. And then on top of that, there are I consider myself super privileged. I'm white, I'm old, I'm a woman, and I'm a Jew. And I have money. That's a lot of privilege there. So, you've got to use your privilege. And the more privilege you have, the more risks that you have to take. And so that's one answer to that. The other is I understand the fear factor because I talk to and I work with a lot of young people and a lot of young Muslims. And they are legitimately afraid. And I understand that. And so when we do the work like in Congress, what gets out in the media is the more confrontational stuff, but that's not what we do every day. What we do every day is the boring but important work of going from office to office to office to office. And that is pretty much risk-free. Anybody can come, and I really invite any of you, because the other thing I want to say is that every day should be Advocacy Day. And I know that for big organizations, it's wonderful to have like twice a year, a lot of people coming in. But for us at Code Pink, it's every single day, and it's volunteers, and anybody can come. And we have, many people that come with us that are really afraid. And after they've come one day, they feel totally comfortable. And they're going into the offices, and they're making the pitch, and they're seeing that they're not going to get arrested. And so I would say do what you're comfortable with for starting, but then when you get comfortable with that, push yourself to go further, because we are in a time of genocide, and we all have to take more risks than we're doing right now.
Can I say a word about that too? The issue of risk is a big question, and the fear, of course, and I'm equally privileged, as Medea, and on top of that, I'm a male, so top of the food chain. But recognizing the privilege is extremely important, and recognizing the fear. I became aware of the fear in the Arab and Muslim community when I was working on the book on the Holy Land Foundation. And that was the purpose of what they did to the Holy Land Foundation and so many others, is to put in fear in the community so people will not speak up. That's exactly the challenge. That's why they weaponize anti-Semitism. That's why they turn Muslims and Arabs into enemies and so on. I mean, this was done by design so that we won't be talking about Palestine. But the issue of risk, my experience of protesting is mostly in Palestine with Palestinians. And the more I did it, the more horrifying it was, because getting arrested by the Israeli army is really not fun, even when you're privileged. I mean, it's nowhere as bad as Palestinians get it, but it's not fun. And so it's scary. And I remember talking, one of my best friends, Bassem Tamimi from Nabi Saleh, he's Ahed's father, Ahed Tamimi's father. And I remember talking to him, and he said, we expect, to pay a price. Of course we take a risk, but when you stand up, you pay a price, and if you're not prepared to pay the price, and the price they pay, we know, the price they pay is their kids are being shot and killed, and they're being tortured and arrested. I mean, their village is being, attacked by the military all the time and so on. But he said, there's a calmness about the way he talked about it, and the way Palestinians throughout all of Palestine talk about standing up and taking the risk, because this is what you do when you stand up. You're going to take a risk, and you have to be willing to pay a price. And granted, all of us here really are privileged because we're here. So it's not the same risk as people in Palestine, of course. It's still, if you're afraid to lose your job, or you're afraid to be targeted in school and all of that, those are real fears. But I was talking to a father earlier today about a daughter who is in high school, and she stands up and she gets targeted, and she stands up and she gets targeted again, and then the students vote her to be the school newsletter editor-in-chief. So I mean, it's something you have to be prepared to do, and if you're not prepared to do, then maybe it's going to take a little time. But there's definitely risk in standing up. I think we all have to accept that.
And can I add to that too? I actually wanted to show a video, so maybe this is a good time. And I'm going to ask you, when you watch this video, a question. So if we can just put that video up, our tech person, really fast. And this is approaching ICE. And you see how small I am. I'm only 5'2". But I'm hoping this video I'll ask you a question about it right after.
Are you Immigration Customs Enforcement?
Yes, look, right here. See?
I want to see your warrant.
You are not an authorized.
I want to see your warrant.
You're not on. Listen, you were arrested already in
Keep-
Essex County. You're gonna get
Keep
arrested
the
again.
door closed. Keep the door closed. Do not answer the door. Keep your door closed. Immigration Customs Enforcement is in the neighborhood. If you are an immigrant, stay home. They do not have a warrant. They don't belong in your house, and they don't have a warrant. Immigration Customs Enforcement is in the neighborhood. Immigration Customs Enforcement is in the neighborhood. If you are an immigrant, stay home. Do not touch me. Do not touch me. Do not touch me. This is public property. This is public property. That's great.
You're on video.
Shame on all of you.
Okay.
Shame on every single one of you.
You're going on private property.
No, this is not. No, you don't have a warrant. You don't have a warrant. You don't belong here. Show me. Show me.
we could
Show
stop
me
it
your
there.
warrant. Every single one of
Thank
you.
you.
Show me your warrant.
Thank you.
Shame. Shame.
And could you put up the slide? Can you put up the slide, my PowerPoint? And I want to show you what happened. And I want to ask you, what did you hear in my voice? You hear me now. Did I sound like confident or did I sound terrified? Okay, I was confident, but I will tell you, I was scared. You could hear me screeching. I can barely talk, right? And then, yes, and that is very true. And then I want to show you, see that picture? It wasn't me. I want to be very clear. It wasn't me that was able to chase ICE away that day. It was the community. But the reason why I'm sharing that is it takes one person's courage to be the first to stand up. You won't win alone, I promise. If you think there's heroes, there's no such thing as heroes. We can't do it alone. But it takes one brave person to stand up to bring community, and we win that way. I will tell you, I'm proud to say in New Jersey, we have faced off ICE where we've met them and chased them away 7 times. In the last 1.5 months, 5 times. It works when we come out and we're together, it works. But it always takes that brave person to be the first to say, my voice was shaken. When they say, speak up even if your voice shakes, it's gonna shake. But we gotta be brave, we have to. We saved a family in that house. So yeah, I just wanted to...
We've got enough time for 2 more questions. Next question's over there.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you very much for all the efforts you are taking to help the Muslim community and the American people. My question is a 2-part question. You talked about reaching out to the people in the middle. So the people in the middle, not the far left, not the far right, but those in the middle. So how and where do you identify these people, number 1? And what plan of action do you undertake to encourage them to participate in your goal?
But okay, but this is what I do. This is my passion, organizing. So what we do is we train people to do one-to-ones. Everyone does one-to-ones. That just means meeting people, right? You meet people every day, guys. You're in clubs. They don't all agree with you, right? They're in the middle, right? People in your neighborhood. With organizers, sometimes we intentionally go out and we do different things. One, we do canvassing, which is just going door to door and knocking on doors and say, hey, how do you feel about this particular topic? Did you know this many people are dying? Like, these are children, et cetera. So you might want to use canvassing, but there are other strategies. In fact, research shows when you actually have like an event in your home and you're inviting people, that's more successful than going out and knocking on doors. But we want to knock on doors. We want to do that. We don't want to throw that out, right? But there are people everywhere, and they don't agree with you. Those are mostly people in the middle. The people who aren't doing anything mostly are those in the middle, right? So they're everywhere. People in the middle are everywhere. The ones that are on the far right are the ones that are like, oh, no matter what, we support Israel. Why waste time? I'm not saying, like, I'm sure Allah will give you ajr, but when we're talking about success and about what is our power, it's people. You want to bring in as many people as possible. Let's not waste our time with those on that are going to be super hard to convince. When the majority, if we're saying the majority of Americans are in the middle, that means the majority of people, when you walk out this convention, that's the majority. They're not going to, it's going to be rare to find people like totally in support of us. And like, oh yes, immigrants, You know, like we need to find a pathway for all undocumented people to be able to be citizens. Also, let's be careful about our language. I heard in this conference, I just want to share, we keep saying citizens and citizens, but our community members are also non-citizens, right? So just wanting to make sure we're including that. I don't know if that helped. Do you have anything else to share? Yeah.
I told you, anything but ordinary, mashallah. Give her, yes. Really quickly on the prior question and then on this one, I want to once again bring it back to our faith. We are, as Miko said, we are in this room. One of you said we're alive. Many of us are able-bodied, not everyone. Many of us have documentation of some kind. We had an incredible meal. Like, we ate more calories at lunch than Palestinians might get in a week. And it's not because we're better. It's not because we earned it. It's because we were chosen for this test. And I say that because I sincerely believe I will be asked, when it's all said and done, what did I do with the privilege I had? And so when we talk about putting privilege on the line, it is because this is the test. I sincerely believe Allah will say you had a voice. And your voice doesn't even shake that much. It might have in that video. So, right, but you had a voice, and where were they going to deport you to? Nowhere. So you stayed quiet. And so that's like one of the things that underpins how I approach this. The other thing is to stand in the face of an ICE agent, to stand at the US-Mexico border like I've done with Linda and Brother Hussam, to do some of these things, I sincerely believe that no harm comes to me unless Allah wills it. None. And I'll tell you that when I went to the border with Brother Hussam, I made a plan to get arrested, but he got arrested. He probably had a plan too. And I was like, but I'm singing as loud as he is, and I'm literally like toe-to-toe with him, and I'm here to get arrested. And I had to like go home and be like, Mom, false alarm. I warned you in advance I might get arrested today. I didn't. How anticlimactic. I even had the bail money ready. And that wasn't even a harm, right? To be arrested as a US citizen at the US-Mexico border is a privilege that we then get to use. And so I say that to say that we teach our kids, fear only Allah. But right now, all of us are facing that test. Like, do we mean it? Because no harm comes to you unless Allah wills it. And if He does, then it might be your path, right? That might be the thing that opens the door to Jannah for you. But we have to actually manifest that. And when we do, it allows us to confront kings and presidents and members of Congress and police officers and ICE agents. And so I hope that as we sit with this, that you'll take those two things with you, that like we will be asked, you were in the United States in 2025, what did you do? Somebody said on the earlier panel, I think Brother Osama said, Gaza doesn't need us, we need Gaza. And what does it mean to really only fear Allah? Like, don't be unstrategic when you go out, but it'll change the way you talk to a police officer. It'll change how you feel about your rights. It'll change how you show up to things, how much you donate, and so on. The middle is a funny way to talk about us, or to talk about our fellow people in this land, stolen from the indigenous people. Poll after poll shows that the majority of people agree with us. So are they even in this middle? Like, language is so limiting in this way. Is yes, if you ask somebody specifically, do you agree that every undocumented person should have a path to citizenship and this should be the you're going to lose them somewhere, right? But if you just say, like, should people have the freedom to stay, the freedom to move, the freedom to be safe? Should Palestinians have the freedom to live? They will agree. And so I actually don't think of people as being in the middle. I think that the majority of people need to be invited in and given something to do. And so that was the +1 I was going to offer to what you said, is relationship building one by one. I spent the week with Linda like 2 weeks ago, and the number of phone calls she will take, the number of people she will stop to talk to, right? Like, power is built through relationships. but we're all just passing each other by. Or maybe we like pay attention at the conference, but not at the PTA, right? Not at our kids' like extracurricular activities, not the person at the grocery store. There was a TikTok trend a while ago where you went to a coffee shop and you ordered your coffee, but you told them your name was Free Palestine. And so when they called out your coffee, they would say Free Palestine. And the number of baristas who loved that activity surprised me, right? So talk to people where they are and then give them something to do, right? So, oh, we're organizing an event. Do you want to come? Oh, you can't come? Okay, let's stay in touch. Do you want to follow this Instagram account? I'm doing a bake sale for Palestine. Is how so many children have gotten involved. Here's a cool t-shirt. Like, I don't know if there's anyone here from Wear the Peace, but like, wow, Wear the Peace? For those that don't know it, like viral clothing brand. And they're donating a portion of their proceeds to Gaza. And they're selling out on a regular basis, right? Like celebrities wear their stuff. And so the challenge for us, in my perspective, is less that I need to convince people and more that I need to give them an accessible way to engage.
Yeah, I wanted to add a few comments. I get confused as a non-Muslim when Muslims talk about left and right, because I think of most of the Muslim community as very conservative. And so I don't know when we use that language how helpful it is, especially at a time when people's opinions are changing so rapidly on this issue. And so when you say don't go to those who are like not changeable, I think the ones who are not changeable are particularly people in the older category. But the ones who are changeable, no matter where they're coming from, are young people. So I would say if we're going to say where do we put the energy that we have, put it in the younger generation.
This will be our last question.
All right, so assalamu alaikum. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for everything you guys are doing. I'm so thankful to be here to listen to you guys talk with such passion. And just thank you again. Thank you so much. So I'm an undergraduate student at American University, and I personally want to learn more about advocacy and figure out how I can make my voice heard. Thankfully, I have the drive, alhamdulillah, to do so. So my question is, how can I encourage and instill the same drive in my peers to want to learn about advocacy, continue the good fight, and the great words of John Lewis, to keep getting into good trouble?
I love that. Thank you for that question. That's a really good question. Remember we talked about one-to-ones and they're just what? Conversations, right? Meetings with people. I forgot to tell you that in organizing is both a science and an art, right? So the science part is what has worked, and that's what we're passing along. The art is what you bring to it, your own special flavor, etc. The science part of it, I forgot. Like, so if I'm doing a training on how to do one-to-ones, yes, we've all had conversations, but guess what? We could be better at our conversations, right? So one piece of that conversation is something organizers call agitation. I know that word sounds bad, but it just means getting people in their feelings. Why? Because oftentimes when we feel pain, what do? We want to just keep going. When you're organizing people, you're actually going to spend time in that pain. You want them to feel that pain. So whatever it is, whether it's talking about a child in Gaza and their child connecting it to their child, let them sit with that pain for a little bit. Don't allow it to just go away. Why? Because that is going to motivate them to take action. That's why Zahra said, do not leave without giving them something to do. And that happens after you agitate. I'm sorry, these special organizing words, I hate it, but it just means get people in their feelings. Let them feel the pain and then give them something to do. Because when people are in pain, they want to do something, and you better have something to do. We have a meeting next week. We're going to be able to say, stop sending these bombs to Israel. Can you join us? That's the best time to ask them to do something. So brother, I hope that helps. We want to get people into their feelings. and also we want to learn what, I hate these words again, we want to learn their self-interest, which just means what are their values, what do they care about, right? If it's soccer, tell them a story about the soccer field that was blown up in Gaza, right? Find out what their values, what they appreciate, like what is important in their life. Let that be the bridge to bring them into your organizing.
My first instinct about Good Trouble is Medea taking interns to get arrested with her on the hill. But in addition to everything, say that again?
They don't have to get arrested.
But if they want to, then the person to learn from. That was my first instinct to the answer, +1 to everything Asma said, but also keep at it. Like, keep at it, right? That's why I go back to that prophetic example, is that you have to talk to a lot of people. Like, this isn't one, it's not a 1-to-1 conversion ratio. We're not converting anyone. Maybe we are, but we're not. But you have to talk to a lot of people. You have to put a lot of time into it, right? Be patient. And then make it accessible. And for yourself, if you want to do more of this, I know all of our organizations are always welcoming new and fresh voices into the work.
So I actually like agitation. I think agitation is a great thing. I think it's really, really important. So agitating is good. I think two things are important to remember. Number one, there's a genocide going on. As we sit here, and I know we all remember that, and I know we all know that, but there's a genocide going on. There's never been a more important time, perhaps, to get up and do something. So that puts us in a position of real opportunity to really stand up and make a difference, because we are going to be asked, whether by the Almighty or by our children and grandchildren, you were there, and what did you do, and how did you express the fact that you're standing up with the Palestinian people? What did you do about it? Not just felt about it and thought about it and cried about it, but what did you do? And as students on campuses, students on campuses in this country have raised the level of the discourse on Palestine more than anyone else. And what we saw, with the encampments, that was probably one of the most important, if not the most important, things that happened outside of Palestine. And so I would focus on the opportunity that we have at this particular time, and on the fact that there's a genocide, and there's no time to hesitate. There is no time to hesitate. The genocide, I don't know what else to say. I mean, what is there to think about, right? So I would press on those two things.
I would say do something cultural, like a film series. I've never seen such fantastic films about Palestine as I've seen in the last year. It's really remarkable. And then, of course, when they come to see the film, give them something to do. I would also say invite Linda Sarsour to speak at your university, because then they will create such controversy. And so many people will come out, and they will be transformed by hearing her. And then I would also say just be present and be creative. When APAC, which now tries to hide they don't have the big conferences that they used to have. They used to have, you remember, like 7,000 people would come? Yeah. And we would set up outside something called a Jews bar, Jews bar, where we would be giving away free juice, and we said, come talk about Palestine. And what we found is there are so many young people that only came because they had a free trip to Washington, D.C., not because they had been, indoctrinated with Zionism. And we created a couple of interns from that kind of thing. So be present, start with the cultural, and invite Linda Sarsour.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for sitting through the panel. Asma, Zahra, Miko, Medea. Can you give them all a round of applause for their time? Now can you get a little bit louder, because they do this every day for you? Now a little louder, because there's so many people here who work so hard. Louder, come on. And now for yourselves, because you're here, you're involved. Give it to yourselves. Thank you all very much.